Hello, fellow cultists. This is DM Nell, and this is another episode of Shadow the Demon Lord Talk, or Sotdl Talk, as I so fondly like to refer to it as. So, today's episode is episode 31. I actually recorded another episode 31, but realized that I screwed it up, so I'm doing a different one. This one will be a kind of a just walkthrough of the Demon's Wetnurse, an adventure for novice characters that was released way long ago, back in the early days of Shadow the Demon And it is, to this day, one of my favorite adventures that has been released by Schwab Entertainment. And I will illustrate why here shortly, because I recently had an opportunity to run this adventure at Gen Con Online 2020. And so I will point you to the adventure that, of course, you can purchase on the Schwab website or Drive-Thru RPG. And as I mentioned, it is an adventure for novice characters. It could very easily be upgraded to be an adventure for expert characters if you wish to do so. But I think it works well as an adventure for novice characters. I'll kind of talk about what I would do if I were to bump it up to an expert. But we'll get to that here in a little bit. What is this adventure about? Well, basically, it is about a couple that own a dairy. And this couple have been trying to have a child for some time, but they were unsuccessful in conceiving. And so the wife decided she's going to just call out to the universe and beg for somebody to make her pregnant. And whereas in this world that might not have negative consequences, in the Shadow the Demon Lord world, you don't do that shit. Because somebody will hear it and somebody will respond. And as things turned out, somebody responded. And so the wife, whose name is Nona, Zach and Nona are the owners of this dairy. As it turns out, she soon after calling out to the universe, she gets pregnant and give birth to a beautiful baby boy. Well, it turns out that the entity that had enabled her to get pregnant sends one of his servants, or one of its servants, to hunt down this family and to basically use the newborn as a gateway for this entity to come into the world. And so that's where Beryl Zarni comes into play. Beryl Zarni is a nanny / wet nurse, and she shows up at the door of Zach and Nona at the Golden Meadows Dairy, and offers her services to them. And they couldn't come at a better time, because with a newborn, they were really struggling to be able to get the work done at the dairy. Plus, since they had to shut down for a bit, then they lost some field hands. So they also needed people working the dairy. And it just so happens that Beryl Zarni knew some people. And so she calls out, and lo and behold, a bunch of farm workers show up, and now the Golden Meadows Dairy is back in business and churning out those dairy products left and right. Well, it seems that Beryl Zarni is not what she appears to be. And as a result, she ends up basically taking over the farm, putting the fear of the demon that she worships into Zach and Nona. And the farmhands that she helped to get hired on board are actually cultists. And all of these folks worship a being called the Maker of Sorrows, mighty demon prince. And so the Maker of Sorrows wants to use the newborn baby as a way to actually be born into the world. So Beryl Zarni, the nanny / wet nurse, begins to nurse the child using her own body. And of course, her body is befouled after many years of worshiping a demon prince. And so the baby becomes essentially corrupted by the foul milk that she is feeding it. And this corruption enables the baby to become pretty much possessed by the maker of sorrows, or one of its servants at any rate. And so that's the backstory. That's what's happening on Golden Meadows Dairy. Now, the way that this becomes an adventure is that somehow the PCs catch wind of some bad things happening in a town called Ephraim's Fork. And Ephraim's Fork is a small town that is on a trade route, and so it gets travelers coming to and fro. In fact, there's a couple of caravans that are parked out there, basically en route to wherever they're going. And the town is a friendly frontier town, basically. But it does have some troubles, and those troubles are manifesting in the form of a strange contagion that seems to be going through town. The contagion starts off with stomach cramps and stomach aches and basically the people feeling sick, but then it progresses, causing the infected person to violently discharge various bodily fluids from their various orifices. And this discharge is everything that the normal discharge would be. And as the disease progresses, it becomes even worse, with bugs and creepy crawly things manifesting within the stuff coming out of the people. So it gets pretty nasty, it gets pretty gross, but then after a few days, it goes away. And nobody knows where this disease is coming from. Some people assume that it got here as a result of travelers passing through town. Some people think that there are other people in town that has caused it. There's a brothel. Well, there's a bathhouse in town that is a bathhouse. And some people believe that the disease is actually a venereal disease that originated from there. So it is the place is kind of a bit of a mess. And so this is where the PCs are introduced to this problem. And depending on how the GM wants to incorporate them into the game, into their adventure, into their campaigns, will determine how they actually get involved. Now, it could be as simple as the PCs are sitting there having a meal at one of the various places in town where they could do so, and they happen to witness somebody that has one of these violent illness episodes, and that's where one of the town elders, they meet one of the town elders, and they tell them, the town elder tries to hire them to help discover the source of this contagion. And it results in the PCs having to do a little bit of investigating. So they have to determine, what is going on in this town. How are these people getting sick? Is it actually a venereal disease? Is it, coming from a specific source? So through the course of their investigations, they determine that there is one common thread, and that common thread is that the people that have become infected have eaten dairy products, and those dairy products have recently eaten dairy products, and those products have come from one place. That is the Golden Meadows Dairy, which is just a few miles up the road. And this has only just recently been happening. In fact, it's been happening since Beryl Zarni and her cronies took over the farm, and a kind of a bit of a side effect of that baby being infected by a demon prince is that that corruption is kind of spread throughout the whole dairy, and it looks like the dairy products that are being produced are a bit tainted by your corruption. And so the taint has made it into this town and wherever else these shipments of dairy products have gone. But they've only recently been happening since the Wetnurse and her cronies have only recently been helping out at the farm. So the PCs can kind of find out that the dairy has recently hired some people, what the timeline is, and it should match up with when people started getting sick. and therefore they can conclude that whatever's happening is happening at the farm. So they would invariably go to the farm to find out what's going on, and that's where they find the cultists, doing normal farm work. So, the GM could choose to have the cultists, just doing their normal daily chores and acting normal, kind of giving the PCs a side eye, or they can become violent right up front, just depending on how you want to approach it and how much time you want to take in this encounter. And then eventually the PCs are led to the main house where they encounter Beryl Zarni and the possessed baby, at which time there would be a battle, presumably. And then, at some point they would need to determine that the baby is possessed, which should be fairly evident right off from the start, and decide how they want to deal with it. Are they going to try to save the baby by figuring out some way to get it unpossessed? Or are they just going to try to kill it as an abomination in the world and get infecting it at the same time? So that is the premise of this adventure. I love it, love it, love it. It's a great, great adventure. Lots of creepiness, lots of disgusting stuff in it. Just perfect for Shadow of the Demonlord. Now, I recently ran this, like I said, in Gen Con. And in Gen Con, as you know, you have a defined amount of time to run this adventure, 4 hours. And as Shadow of the Demonlord isn't a super common game out there, it involved me also kind of teaching the game for a couple of the players as I went. So a lot of my time was eaten up just trying to explain the rules and trying to get through combat and some technical issues as well. So I didn't really have the opportunity to run this adventure as well as it is written. And as a result, I had to take some shortcuts, and I had to actually do some railroading in order to get to where I needed to go before the session ended. So let me talk about how I did this for my Gen Con game and how I think I probably would do it in a normal game, and how you might choose to progress in this game or to progress in this adventure. Okay, so this is my Roll20 site that I used, and as you can see, I got a splash page here, and here are the characters that we had. I had a total of 5. One player, didn't show up. But 5 was plenty. It was actually more than I had anticipated. I thought I would have 4 players, but I actually ended up having 5, which is fine. But I think this adventure works well, probably dealing with fewer characters, because although it is challenging for 4 or 5 characters, I think you have to bump up the challenge by adding stuff to the adventure once you get to five characters or more. But at any rate, I had 5 players, and essentially I had them working for the church to get them involved in the game. I had them working for the church. One of the characters was a priest of the new god, and so that priest hired the other PCs to actually go to Ephraim's Fork, the small town, upon rumor of there being a cult activity there. So that's really all, that's all the setup I needed. There's cult activity, go investigate. And so the players and characters went to investigate, and that's where they went. They came into town, and the way I handled it, well, first of all, what I did was I had a road encounter just to show how combat works in Shadow of the Demonlord. So if you're running a con game and you have some players that don't know how to play Shadow of the Demonlord, my advice is to have just a quick, short combat at the start of the session, or pretty much at the start of the session, at the start of the game, and just kind of walk them through how to roll initiative and for example, how to do boons and banes, and that sort of thing. Now, luckily, my Roll20 site is built; it has boons and banes built into the initiative system. So, and I showed this in other videos, but just to kind of quickly go over it here, all you have to do is click on your character's token, hit initiative, then you can choose fast or slow, and then that comes up in the turn order. And all the GM has to do is put them in order, all the fast and then all the slow, and go from there. But at any rate, have a quick combat, which I did, and then get on with the adventure. So I had them traveling in the road, gave them a quick Beastman combat, and my line of thought here was that the corruption that was corrupting that is corrupting the farm is kind of spreading, and so that is luring evil things to this small town and to the dairy. And so there was a pack of beastmen that was on the road heading towards Ephraim's Fork. And so these beastmen were encountered by the characters, and that gave me an opportunity to set up how to do combat and all that stuff. Now, that's not included in the adventure itself. I added that for purposes of running a convention game. But if you're new to Shadow of the Demonlord and this is your first novice adventure, it might not be a bad idea to add something like this as a practice run for your players to practice combat and to get used to their character sheets and get used to their abilities. Okay, so having said that, moving on, the actual adventure started in Ephraim's Fork. So I had them roll into town, and I found this map online, and it's not exactly set up like the map in the adventure. The map in the adventure, I don't love it because it's a little bit difficult to follow along because it is set up into three. Actually, there's four different. I'll show you in a sec. There's four maps altogether. So there of the town. So there is there's an overhead view of the full town, and then there is a slice of a view from different parts of town, rather than just having the whole town laid out, which I would have preferred to have seen the whole town laid out, like zoom in on this. Rather than slice it out like this. I'm sure they did this to keep the page count down, but I didn't love this. So I went out and found somebody had gone into probably Incarnate and or some other system like that and created a map for Ephraim's Fork, and I just stole it for my purposes. Then before the game, I went in and just put the major encounter areas on the map. So I labeled them out in the various places here, just so that I could, without having to refer to the map in the adventure, so that I could know where all of these places are. So on the road into town, the first couple of places that they ran into was the bathhouse and the smithy. And of course, I had some people out in the bathhouse coming, come on in, that sort of thing. And, trying to tempt them. And of course, a couple were interested, but the priest kept them in line. Then there's a smithy over here. We had a clockwork that was damaged in the Beastman game. So that gave the clockwork player an opportunity to interact with the smithy, and the smith repaired the clockwork there. Then the next couple of encounter areas are the infirmary, Doc Bentley's infirmary, and the general store. Now, Doc Bentley's infirmary has a bunch of sick people in it. So I told the PCs as they walked by, they made a perception check, and they heard all the disgusting noises coming from in there. There was actually a player or two that was injured in the Beastman battle that had some wounds that they didn't want to use their own resources to heal up, because they knew that they would probably need them later in the day. So they decided to go to Doc Bentley's, and I gave them an opportunity to have the doc look them over and give them some healing. But that also introduced them to the taint, the disease that is happening in town. And so they talked to the doc. The doc has been too busy treating the disease to try to trace down where it came from. So she just told them to talk to some other town folks, or maybe even the town elder. The town elder would probably be found in Prudence Appleton's kitchen, which is right up the road. So they decided to go on down the road, but before they did so, they noticed that the general store front door was cracked open, even though there was a big close sign on it. And they had heard from Doc Bentley that he was one of the first people that got ill. So they decided to investigate to find out what's going on. If the place is closed, why is the door open? And this is where I took some liberties with the adventure. One of the things I did with the disease is I added a component to the disease that causes the person that is infected to lose their inhibitions. So before they actually get physically ill, they like I said, they lose their inhibitions, and so they start acting very erratically, and that can be anything from total loss of any filter to going to the restroom in public, taking a dump in the street, walking through town naked, having sex with their dogs, just all sorts of inappropriate behavior, which was displayed at various points in town as people walked through, or as the team walked through. But when they investigated the general store, one thing they had learned about McFarley was he was kind of a clean freak, and so he kept his store immaculate. But when they get to the back rooms where he lives, the place was a bloody mess, literally, because there was blood everywhere. And then they find the dude dead in bed, and apparently he had scraped the skin off of various parts of his bodies because he believed he was dirty, and he could not get clean. And they discovered this by reading his journal, which got more crazy as the days progressed, that he had the disease. And so that's where they learned that there is a mental component to the progression of this disease, not in addition to the physical component. And so they left the general store there, headed on up to the kitchen, Prudence Appleton's kitchen, and that's where they actually witnessed somebody walking into the to the place, and it was one of the local farmers came into the place, a regular at the kitchen, and with a sickle just started killing people that were sitting eating their meals peacefully. He just went in and started killing people, and so the PCs had to wrangle the guy down, and they discovered that the guy was there the day before and had his usual meal, which included dairy products. And this is where they started accumulating knowledge about the people infected with the disease had eaten or ingested some dairy products. And so they talk to the town elder. The town elder hires them to find out what's going on. And so the PCs do a little bit more investigating. Turns out that the Appleton's kitchen was getting their dairy products from the local farm, and people started acting weird just shortly after the new hires came to the farm. So that's when they decided to go to the farm. Now, I'm starting to run short on time here because the players took a lot of time role-playing in town, and the Beastman attack took a little bit longer than I wanted it to, so we were starting to run short on time. And we pretty much had a hard stop at the end of the Gen Con session. So I skipped ahead, went to the dairy, and rather than having them walk onto the dairy and everything seeming normal, I pretty much made it clear that the place was a cesspool of evil by having a well, let me back up a little bit. The whole time the players or the characters were coming here, the weather was bad. It was a stormy day. It was getting progressively worse as they approached this town. And so when they get to the dairy, the storm is just terrible. It's windy, lightning all over the place. The rain is coming down in sheets. And it all seems to be originating from the farmhouse in this dairy. And so when the PCs get there, it's just an ominous sight with this huge, with this farmhouse up there with this dark storm cloud right above it, clearly the source of everything bad that's happening in this town. And so, rather than them actually coming here and, talking to the talking to the farm hands and just kind of slowly realizing that the whole place has been taken over by cultists. I had to kind of shove them into the encounter in order to finish the game quickly. Now, I don't hate the way I did it. In fact, that is one way to go. If you want to get through this adventure in one session, you can definitely just set it up so that it's pretty easy to figure out where the evil is, and it's right over the farmhouse. So the players can go straight there, which is what they did. They went straight to the farmhouse, and they fought the nanny and the baby. They chose to kill the baby. They didn't choose to try to save it, and so they killed the baby, killed the nanny. Had they had been in a campaign with me, I probably would have given them corruption for killing a baby and not even trying to save it. But since this was a Gen Con game, I really didn't, it didn't matter. So they just killed the baby, killed the nanny. The cultist ran away, and the evil taint was lifted from the town. So that's how it went in my game. Now, if you're running this in your own home game and you're not constrained by time, you can take your time on the farm here. You can have the PCs roll up into the farm. It's a normal day. You got farm hands going about their business, and let them talk to the various cultists. Getting the feeling that these guys aren't real farm hands. That there's something off about all of them. Let them talk to Nona and Zach to see the fear that they are experiencing because of the chokehold that the nanny's got on them. Let them encounter the nanny as she is weirdly breastfeeding their kid, and let the whole thing unravel more organically like that. That is how it's written to be handled, and that is definitely a valid way to approach it. Or you can just jump into the deep end of the pool and have the evil just pretty much obvious. Now, if you have players that want to try to save the baby, in order to save the baby, they got to do two specific things. They have to find this charm that's in the baby's crib, get rid of it, and then they have to erase a certain percentage of sigils that the cultists have placed all over the farm. And once they do that, then the entity that is possessing the baby is banished, and the baby is saved. The farm goes back to normal. Of course, you got to get rid of the cultists somehow, and you got to get rid of Beryl Zarni. But that's the nice way of going about it without endangering your players or your characters from being corrupted by not bothering to try to save the kid. So at any rate, that is that's the gist. That's it. That is the Demon's Wetnurse, and it's a beautifully disgusting adventure, and I'll tell you why it's disgusting. Let me get into the final encounter with Beryl Zarni. So Beryl Zarni. By the way, let me show you the farm that I did here. All right, so the farm that I did, I drew up my own farm. This is not in the adventure. This is in my Roll20, and I had to create this myself. So I basically set it up so that it all fits on one screen. And, the farmhouse is back here in the back, and that's where the PCs found Beryl Zarni and the baby. So they had to walk up through the yard. And one thing to make this as creepy as possible, I had them walking up the path, and as they did that, they were making perception checks and challenge rolls. And when one of the players or two of the players succeeded, they happened to look over their shoulders, and several of the chickens, their eyes began glowing, and then their manes began bursting into flames, clearly possessed of some evil power. And then I had one of the cows stand up on its hind legs, and a battle axe materialized in its hoof, which were now arms. And they basically just stood there and watched the PCs. And then as I came up here towards the house, they found a demon goat that also started breathing flames out of its mouth. And so they realized that the whole place is pretty messed up, and they actually thought that these creatures were going to attack them. So they spent a lot of time outside just waiting for the attack to come, but they didn't, because I didn't have really time to run it that way. However, if I was playing this in my normal home game and I had plenty of time to run the adventure, then I definitely would have run the encounter with the possessed animals, and this is something that I added. This is not in the adventure, because I think it's hilarious to have possessed farm animals attacking the player characters. I just think that is funnier than shit. So I actually created tokens for this very purpose, which I'm selling on the Roll20 marketplace in one of my various sets. But at any rate, the animals didn't do anything. The PCs went straight to the house and they fought Barrel's Arnie. Now, Barrel's Arnie and the baby were up on a balcony, and this is the balcony view over here, which is on a different layer. That's why you can barely see it. But she was up on the balcony, and then there were some cultists down here, and they were all chanting, trying to get the Maker of Sorrows fully immersed into the baby's body. And she was breastfeeding the baby up on the balcony, and the baby, of course, was possessed. So the character snuck in and started to kill off the cultists, and Beryl Zarni started attacking them. Now, Beryl Zarni's attacks are what I want to talk about, and this is part of the adventure. So if you look at the adventure and her stat block and the baby stat block, you can see some pretty cool stuff. The Beryl Zarni, of course, they're not too tough, difficulty 25, but what she has as an attack form is a couple of things. She has foul lactation, which is essentially a ranged attack that she can squirt breast milk at them, corrupted breast milk, which does acid damage. And then she has a demonic eruption, which is a pulse of energy that she can, erupt from her form. And the people in the range take damage and are pushed away from her. She also has some spells. I didn't actually get to use any spells, but if you want to weaken your party before they actually get to her, then she can weaken them by casting some of these curse spells at them. So at any rate, the foul lactation is just beautifully terrible. It's so evocative, the imagery it brings into your head, that it's just perfect for Shadow of the Demonlord. It's just disgustingly creepy addition. And then you get to the baby. Now, the baby is supposed to be just a baby that happens to be possessed by a demon. And so the baby has, a couple of demonic powers. It can vomit fire, and then it can void its bowels. And, of course, you're dealing with a baby. So, of course, a baby's going to have projectile shit as an attack form. But the problem with the baby is it only has 5 health. So it only lasted 1 round in my game. And so the fact that the baby only has 5 health is troublesome. But once the baby is dead or incapacitated, then a tiny demon pops out of the baby, and then the players are the characters are playing against or fighting against a tiny demon. If I were to do this again, if I were to do this differently, what I would probably do is just have Baby Gregory be the encounter. So give it the tiny demon stats, which increases its health and its defense, and have the encounter with Baby Gregory last longer than 1 round. That way, the encounter is lengthy. They can tell that the baby's pretty durable, so they can decide while they're fighting it if they're going to kill it, if they're going to try to save it, and that sort of thing. That's what I would do differently. Just replace the stats that are here with the actually it's a small demon, not a tiny demon. The small demon stats, and keep the attack forms here because I love them. They also has the baby can gum the characters, which is perfect, and then they would be potentially compelled by the baby because of its infernal cuteness. But at any rate, the baby attack forms are perfect for him. You can keep those, but change the stats for a small demon to make him more durable, and just keep the demon possession of the baby be the main encounter rather than a tiny or a small demon popping out of the baby afterwards. That's what I would do differently. Okay, so this encounter is the boss encounter for the adventure. And then, of course, you have 10, there's 10 cultists that are the lackeys here that you have to deal with as well, or the players have to deal with as well, so you can figure out how they're going to go about doing that. And then in order to clear the taint from the farm, they have to get rid of the token and also clean up the sigils or sigils that the cultists have hidden throughout the farm. Once I do that, then the curse is lifted, basically, and the town of Ephraim's Fork goes back to normal. So that is the Demon's Wetnurse, and that's pretty much how you can run it, as written, or how you can modify it, like I did for my con game, or how I would modify it again if I were running it for my home group, which I still may do. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of this adventure. You can find it on DriveThruRPG. It's pretty cheap. I don't know how much off the top of my head, because it's been years since I bought this, but everything on DriveThruRPG for Shadow of the Demonlord is cheap. So just go out there and buy it. Support the company. Schwab Entertainment. I'm not affiliated with them. I'm just a dude that loves their products, and I will sing their praises pretty much forever. So this is DM now. I'm signing off now. So hail to the king, baby.